The U.S. State Department's ordered the closure of the Russian Consulate in San Francisco, along with 2 annexes within the next 2 days. The move threatens to take U.S.-Russia relations to a whole new low. With more details, here's correspondent Jacqueline Vouga.
The State Department claims that this is not an anti-Russian move, but simply a move towards parity and an attempt to avoid further escalation.
The U.S. hopes that, having moved toward Russia's desire for parity, we can avoid further retaliatory actions and move forward to achieve the stated goal of improved relations between our two countries.
But how these closures are meant to help the situation really isn't clear. The Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, has already expressed his regret over the escalations that he says were not started by Russia. And escalate it has. When Russia recently announced that the U.S. would need to reduce U.S. embassy worker numbers by 755 people, they were given around a month to do so. But these closures ordered by the U.S. are only being given 2 days to be taken into effect. All of this started last year when allegations began to surface that Russia had interfered in the U.S. presidential election, claims that were never proven or backed up by any concrete evidence. Directly after that, in December, we saw the U.S. expel 35 Russians from the country in reaction to that. The Kremlin took it in stride, not reacting in any official manner, and in fact ended up inviting the children of U.S. officials to the Kremlin for their New Year's Eve celebrations in an act of good faith. We've seen round after round of sanctions imposed against Russia by the U.S., including a fresh batch earlier this month that Trump signed off on. In contrast to that, just days ago, he was announcing and expressing again his confidence that the two countries could finally find common ground and come together.
Say it loud and clear. I've been saying it for years. I think it's a good thing if we have great relationships, or at least good relationships with Russia. That's very important, and I believe someday that will happen.
Thursday's decision coincidentally comes just as the new Russian ambassador to the U.S. has arrived and gotten straight to work, of course.
We did what we could to improve our relations with the U.S. Unfortunately, we still haven't reached a consensus on many issues.
Clearly a bumpy start for him on the job, but after years in the game, he has fairly tough skin.
Obviously, it's timed by the Americans to embarrass the ambassador, and that he in fact, is going to find it very, very difficult to perform his duties and to establish trust. So the ambassador really lands on the worst possible day.
Both countries have repeatedly expressed the hope of improving ties, and yet with Washington having this tit-for-tat approach, it's not really clear if that's going to be possible. Jacqueline Vouga, RT, Washington, D.C.
And various analysts told us the decision to shut down the consulate was immature, and Russia's new ambassador to the United States faces a tough job ahead.
The decision by Russia most recently to reduce the number of staff was to create parity between the two countries, where Russia would have as many people working in its embassies here in the U.S. as the U.S. would have in Russia. So we were at a parity situation. So now this suddenly comes out of the blue, and it's again destabilized the situation. And at the same time, we have Trump talking about good relations with Russia. So you have to wonder who is calling the shots here.
I didn't expect it. I had hoped that at some point this downward spiral in our relationships would end and we could get back to normal. This is simply one more tit for tat. It's rather childish. I think if we had a little bit more mature leadership within the State Department, I think it would be helpful.
I do believe that Trump probably has some desire to have good relations with Russia, but this manufactured scandal, and it is manufactured, of Russiagate, for lack of a better word, has painted him into a corner. I mean, there are obviously parts of the U.S. establishment that do not want rapprochement with Russia.